Hello, my dear friends. You're in the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in the world on the 7th of January of 2026. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. I know that very interesting updates are coming from Venezuela, from the United States of America, and from the North Atlantic Ocean. So we have already discussed some updates about the strange things that are happening place there. So let's discuss them once again in details, because during the previous 24 hours we received additional updates. So once again, several days ago, 200 American brave soldiers entered the central part of Caracas, as it was stated by the President of the United States of America, and they managed to arrest already a former president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Later, he was brought to the New York court. And after that situation, the US authorities made lots of interesting statements about the situation with Russia, with China, with Russia's air defense forces, with Mexico, with Greenland, with Canada, with Iran. Lots of statements were made by the President of States, by Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and of course by Pete Hegseth. And summarizing everything, during the previous 24 hours, the President of the United States of America made probably the most important statements that summarizes everything that we've seen since the beginning of probably late December of 2025. I'm pleased to announce that the interim authorities in Venezuela will be turning over between 30 and 50 million barrels of high-quality sanctioned oil to the United States of America. This oil will be sold at its market price, and that money will be controlled by me as a President of the United States of America to ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States of America. I have asked Energy Secretary Chris Wright to execute this plan immediately. It will be taken by storage ships and brought directly to unloading docks in the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So between 30 and 50 million barrels of high quality sanctioned oil to the United States of America. But the thing is that we see that some countries, some states in the world are not agree with the situation. And everything started on the 24th of December, when a ship left Venezuela and began moving in the northeastern direction. And according to media, the US Marines were trying, or coastal defense or coastal patrol were trying to stop that ship, probably to inspect the ship or to block the ship. But at some point, the crew of that ship changed the title of that ship, and they changed the color, the flag of that ship, and that ship became a ship of the Russian flag. So, and that situation, that legal situation, stopped the US forces to do anything with that ship. We discussed the situation yesterday. If you remember, there was a report that the Russian oil target Marinera, which has been evading the US military since December 24, is currently under the constant surveillance by Boeing Poseidon patrol aircraft of the US Navy west of Ireland. It is also reported that more than 8 Globemaster military transport aircraft have arrived at one of the British air bases. So the US were paying too big attention to this ship, and it was a very strange thing. And if you remember yesterday, I told you that it seems that there is no oil on the ship. It seems that there are gold, maybe money, cash, or something like this. Another important thing, that a day before yesterday we got another report published by different media that 2 slides show a large-scale location of the US Armed Forces aircraft to Europe over the past 2 days, very similar to the summer location before the US strikes on Iran. Some sources reported that this relocation could be also connected with the ship that was moving in the direction of the Russian Federation. But this is not the end of the story. During the previous 24 hours, we received more updates. Different media stated that Russia has deployed a submarine and other naval units into the North Atlantic to protect the tanker Marinera from possible actions by US forces, according to the Wall Street Journal. The tanker, previously known as Bella 1, has been followed by the US Coast Guard for the past 17 days since leaving the Venezuelan coast, and has now reached waters near Iceland and the United Kingdom. So obviously the Russians will never deploy a submarine or navy fleet, a military fleet, just to protect a vessel or a tanker with oil. Obviously this is nonsense. Obviously the real reasons are different. But this is also not the end of the story. Another important thing happened yesterday in Venezuela. According to information we have, at least 5 tankers left Venezuela. The sources reported that those tankers belonged either to Russian or Chinese or Iranian shadow tankers, shadow fleet, and the sources reported that those tankers were carrying stolen US crude oil. So 5 tankers, that's a lot of tankers. And today the sources reported, media reported, that when those tankers left Venezuela, they also changed the flag, and they also now are moving in the Atlantic Sea and or in the Caribbean Sea under the flag of the Russian Federation. So this is the story, and this is probably the biggest conflict or escalation between the United States of America and the Russian Federation, or more precisely, between Trump and Putin, because from one side, Trump said that from 30 to 50 million of crude oil the United States of America will get from Venezuela, but now tankers all over the world that are moving to Venezuela and back from Venezuela are changing their flags under the flag of the Russian Federation, and it seems that the Western countries can't do anything with this, and we see that Russians are deploying their fleet in the North Atlantic Ocean, which means that something big is going to happen there. We need to make a small adjustment to the current video. This evening we received a report that the US forces landed on the tanker, and according to information we have, the tanker was arrested, the tanker by the name of Marinera. I would like to remind you that this tanker was going under the flag of Panama, but on the 24th of December the tanker changed its flag, and today, according to information we have, the tanker was arrested by the US forces. Furthermore, this is not the only tanker that was arrested by the US authorities. According to media, another tanker was arrested right after the tanker left the state of Venezuela, and the tanker was by the name of Sofia. And so, according to media, we can summarize everything. During the previous 24 hours, or at least during the previous hours, 2 tankers that were going under the flag of the Russian Federation were arrested in the Atlantic Sea, in the territory of the Atlantic Ocean. So as we can see, the red lines were crossed, and now we are waiting for the response from the Russian Federation. Most likely they're not going to do anything today, because today is the Orthodox Christmas. Most likely we're going to see an answer to the situation within the next several days. Now let's move further. Let's relocate to Europe, and let's discuss the situation in France, where the second day in a row the coalition of willing is having a meeting between different leaders. They are talking a lot, they are signing papers, and today, according to information we have, Zelensky, Ukraine, the United Kingdom and France signed an agreement, a draft agreement, and according to this agreement, the European countries will deploy forces on the territory of Ukraine when the conflict finishes. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Ukraine army will number 700,000 after the war ends, and Western partners have pledged to support it. Today we have made significant progress, providing reliable guarantees for a lasting peace. For the first time, this demonstrates a rapid rapprochement between countries, including the United States. That was stated by the President of France. But we need to understand that everything we can see right now is not something that is the real situation. There are lots of things behind the scene. So today I read several articles published by different military and political experts that these things about these forces, about let's say about deploying of French or UK troops on the territory of Ukraine, is not something that could be made to make the Russians very angry. No, this situation is completely opposite. The experts are saying that when ceasefire comes, when conflict ends, Ukraine if Ukraine reduces its forces, let's say from 1 million of soldiers to the level of 200,000 soldiers, which demands the Russian Federation, then imagine yourself up to 800,000 people, soldiers, men, will leave the line of combat contact fully loaded, fully with weapons, with guns, with explosives, with skills to use drones, and these people will, let's say, move through Ukraine to their homes. And if Ukraine have elections right after this demobilization, this can lead to unpredictable consequences, because these people will have no job. They don't know what to do, just to do the war, and that's it, and with weapons, of course. And the Western countries are afraid of the situation. If elections happen, these people can take arms in their hands, and a civilian war can start. So this is the main reason why the Western countries are going to deploy troops, these 50 or 30,000 people through Ukraine, and their main purpose would be to stabilize the situation, to be like a patrol, like a police forces, with the purpose to control and to support the parliament and the president elections on Ukraine. And the reason why Ukraine doesn't want to reduce the army is the same. They don't want these people to go to Ukraine. They want to keep them along the line of combat contact, along the front line. This will help them to control these people. And first of all, this will allow them, this is the most important, to control them and not to allow these people to take arms in their hands and, let's say, to start fighting with each other. So this is the situation. But anyway, this might be just speculation or some fantasy, but this is a very interesting point of view. Anyway, we will understand what is happening in Ukraine only after a ceasefire, or only after a peaceful settlement of the conflict. Only then we will understand the real purposes of all these documents and papers that have been signed on the territory of France. Now let's discuss the situation in Ukraine. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of important updates. And first, let's talk about the Zaporizhia direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation and the Russians intensify their activities rapidly. For example, in the western Zaporizhia direction, several pro-Russian sources stated that Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to improve their position significantly to the southwest of the settlement of Rychny. Furthermore, the Russians continue advancing along the main road M18. Ukrainians are trying to bring additional forces, but the Russians control the situation. It seems that the Russians are about to begin offensive operation along this road as well. As for the settlement of Yakovlevka, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything, but if you remember, yesterday, according to information we had, Russians managed to enter the southwestern part of the settlement and to dig in deeper. So we are waiting for additional updates. As for the eastern Zaporizhia direction, during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of updates, and these reports were published by pro-Ukrainian sources and by neutral mappers. According to them, the Russians began offensive operation, and as a result of clashes, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. The Russians used the same tactics. They used sabotage and reconnaissance group that tried to break through or to find breaches through the defense line of Ukraine and to get as deep as possible. And telling the truth, and furthermore, today, for the first time since the battle for the city of Gulia, we received the video where we could see soldiers of the armored forces of Ukraine in this part of the settlement. But we haven't adjusted the map because we are waiting for additional clarifications. But I'm just trying to tell you that some first videos were published. That confirmed the presence of the Russian forces in this territory of the settlement. So this is a very important piece of news because if this information is correct, that most likely the Russians will only intensify their offensive, and from these positions the distance to the settlement of Orekhov would be just 25 kilometers, which is just 1 or 2 months of offensive operation for the Russian forces. So lots of updates are coming from here. Let's wait and see. But at the same time, during the previous 24 hours, we received a report that Ukrainians began counterattacks from the area of the river of Gaichur, trying to get as deep as possible. We are not talking about regular army or some regular or major operations from the Ukrainian side. We're just talking about dozens of sabotage and reconnaissance groups that are trying to infiltrate Russian defense and to get as deep as possible. Several sources reported that sabotage and reconnaissance group of the armored forces of Ukraine were even discovered and spotted around the settlement of Privilna. This is a very important question because it's important to understand the purpose of this sabotage and reconnaissance group. Either the Ukrainians are just trying to disrupt the logistics of the Russian forces in the area of Gulaya Pole and to slow down the Gulaya Pole offensive operation, or the Ukrainians are trying to understand the level of defense, the strength of the sense of defense of the armed forces of Ukraine, and maybe Ukrainians are planning to carry out a counter-offensive operation in this side with the purpose to recapture all territories they lost during the Russian Gaichur offensive operation. So we believe that in coming days, huge activities are going to take place right exactly in this area. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Dobropolye direction. During the previous 24 hours, several mappers stated that some changes were recorded around the settlement of Rodinska. The Russians managed to improve their positions in this area and to take under complete control these three lines. So this is a very important progress on the ground. The Russians are trying to finish the battle for the city of Rodinska as soon as possible. Furthermore, several mappers stated about additional progress on the ground in the Dobropolye direction, and this information, as you can see, was also confirmed by pro-Ukrainian and pro-neutral mappers. So this is the situation in this area. Now let's talk about the city of Kostiantynivka. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very important updates about the situation in this direction. The sources reported, mainly pro-Ukrainian sources reported, that Russians, due to bad weather, managed to break through Ukrainian defense and to improve their position significantly around the settlement of Vilinka. Furthermore, neutral mappers and pro-Ukrainian sources reported that the Russians managed to outflank the settlement of Berezovka and to do the same. So pro-Western sources are saying that Russians managed to take under complete control the entrance to the village of Vilinka from the north, and that Russians managed to cut logistic and to take under control supply roads to the settlement of Berezovka and Ilinka from the southeast and from the north accordingly. So this is a very important piece of news. As of now, we haven't received anything that can confirm this, but these reports can tell us that the Russians are about to begin their major offensive operation with the purpose to establish complete control over the villages of Vilinka and Berezovka. And if Russians somehow are able to finish the battle for these two territories, then we can say that the battle for the city of Konstantinivka has begun. This is going to be basically the beginning of a final part of the battle for this territory. As for the Slaviansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, we received lots of updates, and the most important of them are about the logistic. I would like to remind you that during the previous video, we discussed several videos that were published by pro-Russian sources of how they were attacking different engineering equipment across and through the river of Seversky Donetsk, along the shore, along the banks of the Seversky Donetsk river. And here we can see a bigger video with more engineering equipment that were destroyed. So Ukrainians, for some reason, just during the early 2026, decided to create as many as possible river crossings in the city, because now they see that the logistic of the city of Lyman is at the verge of collapse. So, which means that Ukrainians brought lots of equipment to this area from the city of Slaviansk, and every day, 24 hours, 7 days a week, they are trying to build as many as possible bridges with the purpose to re-establish the normal logistic for Ukrainians in the area of the city of Lyman, but the Russians control the situation and the Russians don't allow the Ukrainians to do anything with this. At the same time, it seems that the major battle for the city of Lyman has begun. From one side, different mappers stated that Ukrainians managed to recapture the southeastern part of the settlement of Lyman. This information was provided by the neutral mapper. So this is the situation in this area. At the same time, several pro-Russian sources and several neutral mappers also confirmed that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to break through Ukrainian defense in the northern part of the city of Lyman and to establish complete control over these territories. Pro-Russian sources reported that this is approximately the territory that is already under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. We are talking about the farms in the northern part and first streets and buildings in the northern part as well. So the major battle for the city of Lyman, it seems, that has begun. The Russians understand that Ukrainians, despite the fact that Russians control the Seversky Donetsk river, will be able probably during the night period of time to create all these river crossings, and then the logistic of the city of Lyman would be restored, and then it would be much more difficult for the Russians to fight for the settlement. So that is why the Russians decided to begin this offensive right now, because they see that currently time plays in Ukrainian favor. So which means that the battle has begun, and the main purpose of Russians to finish the major parts of the battle before Ukrainians are able to establish the logistic through the river of Seversky Donetsk. Now let's move further. As for the Kupyansk direction, during the previous 24 hours we also received important updates. I would like to remind you that yesterday several pro-Russian sources stated that the Barova direction looks something like this. Ukrainians control most of the territories that were captured by Russians according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, and today we have adjusted the map by adding additional gray zone in this area. Today several neutral mappers confirmed that the Russians most likely were forced to fall back from these territories under the pressure of the armed forces of Ukraine. So as of now, because we don't have videos, we have just added a gray zone above the territories under complete Russian control until additional probable clarification. Furthermore, the clashes for the territory of the city of Kupyansk continue. Today we have also changes, so these are the changes on the ground between the dates. Just yesterday we discussed that Russians began offensive operation along R79 road with the purpose to establish complete control over the territory, and we received first videos where we can see how Russians were moving in this area. Based on the yesterday's video, we adjusted the map, and today neutral mappers clarified the situation on the ground. They confirmed that currently there are very heavy clashes for the settlement of Tishinkova. Furthermore, the Russians are advancing in the direction of the settlement of Mala Shapkovka. At the same time, pro-Ukrainian sources reported that they managed to recapture the territories around Mirova and to counterattack in the area of Kondrashevka. So now there are very heavy clashes, but at the same time we received a video that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources of how they were bombing and attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine on the territory of the central city hospital. So based on this video, we came to the conclusion that the Russians managed to save their positions in the central part, and that the Russians are trying to restore control over the territories they lost. So the battle for the city of Kupyansk, as we can see, continues. As for the Sumy direction, during the previous 12 hours, several sources stated that Russians improved their positions in the area of the settlement of Grabovsk. So basically, according to these reports, the Russians began an offensive operation in the direction of the settlement by the name of Ryasnaya. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds that we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.